Psychology of people who live inside their own head's air in the shower. Somewhere between the shampoo and the 11 minutes of standing completely still. You've just won an argument with someone who doesn't even know they've upset you yet. Or maybe you're on the motorway and somewhere around junction 14 you delivered the most devastating, perfectly timed response to something your manager said 3 weeks ago. Everyone in that imaginary room went quiet. They were impressed. Then a car horn snapped you back, and you realized you were doing 47 in the outside lane with the expression of someone accepting a BAFTA. If any part of that landed somewhere familiar, good. Because what I'm about to describe isn't just daydreaming. This is something else entirely. Most people assume this is just creativity, or boredom, or a quirky personality trait. It isn't. There's a specific neurological pattern underneath it, and once you understand it, the experience stops feeling like a flaw and starts making complete sense. Here's where it begins. Your brain has a system called the default mode network. It activates the moment you stop paying attention to the outside world. When you zone out, look out the window, or stand motionless in a hot shower, this network switches on and starts generating you. Your memories, your fears, your futures, your rehearsed conversations. This is completely normal. Every human brain does this, but in some people, something shifts. The internal simulation becomes more rewarding than external reality. The brain learns through repetition that emotional needs can be met in here. And once that learning takes hold, the real world begins to feel flat, thin, like it's missing a layer. In 2002, clinical psychologist Professor Eli Somer at the University of Haifa formally identified this pattern and named it maladaptive daydreaming. That name doesn't quite capture what it feels like from the inside, but it gave us the framework we needed to study it. What Somer found wasn't casual mind-wandering. People were spending hours, sometimes the majority of their waking day, inside fully constructed internal worlds. Recurring characters, evolving plots, emotional arcs that ran across months and years, and almost all of them had one thing in common. The inner world gave them something the outer world hadn't. Not escapism in the lazy, dismissive way people use that word, like you're avoiding your responsibilities on purpose. It's more precise than that. The imagined scenarios provided control, emotional resolution, a version of connection that felt safe in ways real relationships hadn't. You can rerun a fake conversation. You can edit it. You can make the other person finally understand. In a way, the actual human in your life never quite did. That's not weakness. That's an extraordinarily sophisticated coping mechanism. Now here's the part that matters. The brain is a reward-learning machine. And once it learns that emotional needs can be met internally, it starts preferring that route. Real people are unpredictable. Real conversations don't follow the script. Real intimacy is slow, uncertain, and involves tolerating discomfort you can't edit out. The daydream never disappoints you that way, so you go back, and slowly. The gap between the internal world and the external one gets wider. The research also points to a specific personality trait as a risk factor: absorption. This is the tendency toward deep, immersive focus, the same trait that makes someone get completely lost in music, or walk out of a film genuinely wrecked. People high in absorption feel everything more intensely. So at some point, they built a room where they could feel things on their own terms. And then the shame arrives. Because at 30 minutes, deep into a scenario where you're finally saying the thing you never got to say at 14, somewhere in the background, that time is passing. The world kept moving while you were gone. And resurfacing carries this strange emotional aftertaste. Hard to name, easy to feel. And before you've consciously decided anything, you're already halfway back in. The shame feeds the need. The need deepens the habit. And the habit starts to occupy more and more of the space where your actual life was supposed to be happening. But here's what I want you to hear before we go any further. This pattern statistically develops in people who needed an exit door that the real world wasn't providing. Maybe their environment wasn't safe. Maybe they were chronically lonely inside spaces that were supposed to feel welcoming. Maybe they were simply a little too sensitive for the particular world they landed in, and this was the most creative, least destructive way their nervous system found to cope. The daydream wasn't the problem. It was the solution to one. The real question is just whether it's still serving you now or whether it started costing you something. And this is where I need you to actually stop for a second. Some people who recognize themselves here will immediately want to eliminate it. Shut the whole thing down. Become someone who never disappears into their own head again. That's not what the research points toward. And it doesn't make psychological sense. The goal isn't to destroy the inner world. The goal is to understand what it's doing for you, and then, slowly and probably awkwardly, to start building some of that in reality. What does the imagined version of connection give you that you're not letting yourself ask for out loud? What does the fantasy version of resolution provide that you're not allowing yourself to actually pursue? What is the scenario rehearsing that you are too afraid to actually live? The capacity to construct entire emotional worlds inside your own mind with narrative coherence, recurring characters, and psychological nuance is not a disorder. It's a capability, a genuinely remarkable one. The people who experience this most intensely are often carrying an enormous amount of internal richness that has simply never found the right outlet, the right person, the right moment of safety to exist in the real world. The tragedy isn't that they imagined so deeply. It's that somewhere along the way, they decided that depth was only safe when it was invisible. So if you watched this whole video and felt a very particular kind of quiet, recognition, not the, oh, that's interesting kind, but the kind where you had to remind yourself to breathe, I just want you to know, nothing about you needs to be fixed. You adapted, quietly, privately, in a way nobody saw and nobody gave you credit for. And that's worth understanding.